Before we get started today with the CX Moment, I want to take a moment and acknowledge the racial inequality that exists in our country and in our communities. While we're going to talk about customer experience and customer service today, both SoFi and Zendesk recognize that there are more important things going on right now, and we certainly don't dismiss that. Our companies are committed to fighting racism and educating our partners, employees, and customers to be better listeners and better allies. Zendesk will be hosting a special CX moment to talk about racism and allyship next week, especially as it impacts our support teams. So please join us for that conversation. I'm Sarah Reed from Zendesk, and today we're joined by Kirk Chapman, the VP of Operations for SoFi. We're going to be talking about what's happening with SoFi's business, with their support center, and with their customer experience. This 30 minutes goes by super fast, as you know, so ask your questions in the Q&A, and we're going to do our best to answer them all. You'll also see a short poll about 5 minutes before the program ends. Please take a moment to share your feedback. We appreciate everything you have to tell us, and we certainly appreciate you. So let's go ahead and get started. Hey, Kirk, how you doing today?
Good. How are you, Sarah?
I'm good. For those who aren't as familiar, can you walk us through who SoFi is?
Sure. SoFi is an online personal finance company that helps people borrow, save, spend, invest, and protect their money from a mobile device or a computer. We provide the tools for people to do everything from their app on their phone. They can refinance existing loans, mortgages, spend money, pay bills. We offer SoFi Money Debit Card. You can invest in stocks, ETFs, crypto, fractional stock bits, all in one place. And I think it's worth mentioning that our mission is to help people achieve financial independence and to realize their ambitions, which is big, not our ambitions, but their ambitions. And so to do that, it's essential we provide our 1 million plus members financial tools and resources to do that.
So you consider yourself to not be a bank, is that correct?
That is correct. We are not a bank.
So what does it mean? What's the difference between being a financial institution and a bank, or not a bank?
Yeah, sure. So a bank is very specific. It's an officially chartered institution. There's different regulations, different requirements, and they generally provide a certain set of products at a decent profit margin. But that said, just because we're not a bank doesn't mean that we're not heavily regulated, complying with local, state regulations, federal regulations, and we're similar, and we offer similar products to what banks offer. I think, though, we do it all from a digital platform, and we keep our member at the center of our experience. Charging no fees, using mobile device, no branches. I think we'll talk about that at some point. But I think the biggest thing about not being a bank is it gives us the ability to rethink what banking should look like, or what a financial institution experience should look like, without I guess sticking to the mold of what exists and what has existed.
So you bring up this concept of not having physical branches, and it seems to me that you were likely then better prepared for COVID-19 than some of the more traditional banking institutions. You have a distributed workforce already. You, for example, are not where your company is located at this moment in time, and you don't rely on physical branches. So how has that actually been, I would assume that's been better for you all than perhaps some of your competitors?
I think from a traditional banking standpoint, of course, we're allowing our members to access their funds from anywhere without having to go into a physical branch. That said, although we don't have physical branches, we do have physical offices. So we did have to transition our entire workforce. We have 12 offices across the US to be able to work from home. That was a fairly significant effort that we did, all while maintaining our members' concerns and answering questions during a period of heightened concern around their finances and around what's going on.
Were your support teams working from home prior to COVID-19, or were they in one of your offices?
They were in one of our offices. So so our like I said, it was a challenge that a lot of hard work went into, but moving those folks from our office to home, and with probably I would say a heightened call volume. People have questions. One of the things that we offer is financial counseling, investment counseling, career advice, and so obviously during this period, those volumes went up while we were trying to transition our folks to work from home.
And around that type of volume, it's right now, the world is changing very, very rapidly, and our markets are volatile. Things look good this week, which is awesome. Interest rates are low, but there's new policies that are coming out all the time. We're hearing about new government regulations. There's new tax, changes. It seems like every single day there's something else that we need to pay attention to. And I would expect that people are also just concerned with the long-term stability of their financial future. Do you see all of that havoc? Is that playing havoc within your contact centers and with your volume and the type of questions?
The short answer is yes. But I mean, we operate off a set of values. One of our values is putting our members first. And so, I mean, specifically to Zendesk, and this is not like a sales pitch to Zendesk, but this is since we're having the conversation, it's relevant, is being able to quickly add to kind of frequently asked questions. People don't want to be on the phone. They don't want to spend a lot of time getting answers to their question. They have plenty to worry about right now. So being able to deliver that very quickly, being able to kind of listen to our members and predict and kind of anticipate what they're going to ask, specifically going back to student loan questions. I mean, with all the changes there, making sure that that they know what's involved before they do any sort of refinancing or changing and those sort of things. Absolutely. I would say it has not wreaked havoc, but it has definitely played a role. And it's a very big piece of our business is making sure that we are communicating with our customers and they have a first-class experience.
So you talk a lot about some of the extra benefits and things that you provide your members, like the career counseling. And I would also anticipate that people are perhaps wanting to hear a bit more of just counseling in general at this point in time. Like, help me better understand what's going on with student loans. My stepson is going to college this fall, and so we're in the midst of that as we speak, trying to figure all of that out, because it's certainly different than when I went to college. And so were your agents always prepared to spend that amount of time counseling and talking to your members, or is that a little bit of a new shift for them?
Yeah, I mean, so I would just say, I'll break it down into two components. I mean, I want to go back to our core values, and one of them is putting our members first. So that comes in a number of ways, as you mentioned, not just how we position our products, and not charging fees, that sort of thing, customer service, but it's also having this counseling with our members, helping them manage their money, knowing what their career aspirations are, helping them. All of our members get this complimentary access to financial planning, career coaching, all of that. So that's kind of the one piece of your question. The second piece is then what has really changed? You know what I mean? Because there is a huge, there's huge change in the questions people are asking. The number one would be, with COVID, am I eligible for deferment on my loan payments? And so how do we get ahead of that? Either by reaching out to our members or by listening to those. Our SoFi Money members, the PPP stimulus package, how are they getting that money via ACH, direct deposit, those sort of questions, and just kind of listening and changing quickly to what our members are asking. So that feedback loop of hearing what those questions are, preparing our customer support folks to say, hey, look, here's a way to help and anticipate what's going on out there and staying ahead of it.
Now, I know the one-to-one interaction with a member and your support organization is really important, but also how important is self-service, and being that you're primarily a mobile and digital company, how is your self-service different, I should say, or ask?
Can you ask it a little more specifically?
Sure. So what are you doing different than perhaps some of your competitors with self-service? Like, are you going more towards video? Is it more towards the FAQs? Is it, how are you getting people to help themselves?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely more towards FAQs. I mean, that's huge. But also FAQs have to be geared towards the right question. FAQs they're too generic or don't answer the question. What's the point? So we have a huge effort on that piece, on the FAQ piece. We're also looking at all sorts of technologies around chatbots, chat assistant, those type of technologies to assist our members. I think one thing is that when you say self-serve, you don't want to lose the humanity in the conversation, especially at a time like this. And so how do you don't want to self-serve so much that your members feel like there's not somebody on the other side, especially I would say, especially when you're going through a very, very turbulent time right now, an uncertain time.
How, because of all the uncertainty that's happening and the changes that we've been talking about, how did you train your agents, particularly as they all moved home and weren't now in an office environment where you could get too many of them at one point in time?
So there weren't, I would say there weren't big changes for our agents other than, hey, you're not in an office anymore. And we can talk a little bit more about that. The biggest changes though are really sentiment, so people may call in about some financial decision or some financial issue, but there's a heightened anxiety around that, you know what I mean? Or a heightened sense of concern that may not be directly related. So the training really was geared towards making sure our agents were conscious of that and thoughtful in those conversations, and that and addressing our customers with a full picture of the world around them and not just distilling that down into kind of a transactional conversation.
And with that sentiment, do you find that your agents are also taking perhaps a little bit more of that emotion internally than they used to? Because I would anticipate that there is that heightened emotion coming from your member base.
Yes. So are you asking then, does that translate over to our agents as they're dealing with that day in and day out?
Yeah. So does it translate to them? Are you doing some different things to help them overcome those, the additional emotional experience that they're perhaps going through?
Yes, definitely. I mean, without getting into details of that, SoFi has a lot of resources available to help anybody internally, but especially on that front. So SoFi has actually done a great job of supporting all of our team members and on that side.
So let's go back to some of the unique services that you all provide, like the career coaching for your members. Where did that come from, and walk us through what that benefit is to your members and to SoFi?
I mean, I think it's part of when we say put our members' interests first and get their money right. The career coaching is how do you find a career, maximize kind of, I hate to use the term maximize your revenue within that career, because one of the things that kind of, what surprises me, it seems counterintuitive, is even in SoFi, we have seminars there, how do you ask for a raise? And you can imagine, I think everybody's shocked. Is like, great. Now tomorrow I've got all of my reports asking for a raise, but I think it's an honest, true. It's really what we believe. Like, we really want our members to get their money right. And part of that is actually navigating a career, navigating these life moments, and getting them into a position where they're achieving what they want to achieve, which may be entirely different than what I want to achieve, but hearing them and getting in those positions. So I think it really comes out of an honest desire to help our members.
It's a fascinating approach, and in some ways I can see where it might be creating a little bit of a challenge internally for you, but it's great advice to be giving out, and it's oftentimes not the advice that companies themselves give. Just with the financial advice that a member can also get is, how do I maximize my finances? How do I maybe diversify my portfolio? Those are things that no one else is teaching you.
Right. And what does that even mean? Diversify my portfolio. I mean, a lot of it's like, it's complicated, So, it's born really out of a desire to live up to our values.
And so do you find that perhaps this current environment that we're in, primarily with COVID-19, where people are stuck at home, they aren't getting their social norms that they're accustomed to. Do you find now that this is an opportunity to get to know your customers a little bit better?
Yes, 100%. I mean, whether it's customers or employees internally, I think it's helped everybody realize that we're not just wheels in the cog of the machine. They're real people on both sides of it, not only our members, but internally. People are just talking about things they didn't talk about 3 months ago, you know? And so the more we listen, the more we get to know them personally, the more we can offer not just advice, but provide them services they need to get to where they want to be.
And, oh, sorry, keep going.
No, go ahead, please.
I was going to ask, so those things that you're now learning from your members. So if they're coming to you and saying, hey, these are services I potentially might be interested in, or here's some things that I want to talk about or ask advice around that I maybe didn't, 3-4 months ago, how do you then incorporate that into your agent knowledge base or your FAQ system?
So that, I mean, as a customer of Zendesk, we turn that back around to our training team and incorporate it through a team that's dedicated to that. Very, very tactically. I mean, that stuff is listened to, forwarded on. There's a feedback loop that then goes and puts that into our knowledge base and FAQs, and notes on that particular member as it relates to what they're dealing with.
And back onto the whole training aspect, because I know it's oftentimes something that people ask us about is, what are the mechanisms to train a remote team?
That's a great question, and I don't have a great answer for it. I mean, we have internal processes. It's developing right now. It's just not. I don't have like a great answer for how are we training remotely, other than the tools that we have internally.
So let's talk about the tools. How are where you can. I know as a financial institution, you can't answer all my questions. I know that, but I'm going to keep asking until we get one. So with those tools, for Zendesk, for example, we rely heavily on Slack and we spend a lot of time going back and forth in Slack channels or in direct messages to in a way replicate those sidebar conversations that you would have with a desk mate or with the person or with the team that you now don't get to see on a regular basis. What do you all use at SoFi?
So we use, this standard set of tools. Look, we use Slack, we're on Zoom, we use Zoom, we use, your standard email messaging. But primarily, I would say that this goes back to equipping our customer service reps, our agents to go off-site, is making sure that they had cameras, that they had the ability to still connect with their team and have those conversations. Those are the general sets of tools. I would say also, to your point though, it's how do you then maintain and manage those relationships while you're away, and I think part of that and part of the correct usage of the tool, what's been interesting, goes back to your question about how are you connecting with your customers and listening to them. One thing about this is I just invited however people, 79 people into my house. You know what I mean? Met people's kids and their pets, and it's really changed the dynamic, which I think has been great. And so you can have those conversations not just about members, but about your work family, which I think is fantastic during this time period.
I agree. And I think it's something that's absolutely invaluable for us in having this ability to get to know our employees and our peers so much better. One of the things, I ran contact centers for years, and one of the things that I always said was, there's a human behind every metric. And it's so important for all of us in support organizations to understand what drives our employees, what is motivating them to do this job, to talk to customers every day. And this now gives us almost it's a better way for us to figure that out. Yeah,
it's interesting. All of a sudden it's not just a workmate, it's a mom or it's a dad, or it's not, it's someone that has a house, they have bills, they have all the things in life. It's not just, hey, I see you from 8 to 5 and that's, you're just a worker, which is fantastic.
It is fantastic. I expect that Jamie Pringle is someone that you work with.
Yes.
So Jamie is piping in to help out on that training question that we had where we were dancing around a little while ago. So Jamie says that so far our training team works heavily with Zendesk to develop an e-learning module to train internal SoFi team members, both on Zendesk and other tools. And
You would know. So
and also that you have a Zendesk Slack channel where team members ask questions on all things Zendesk.
we do. Yeah. Yeah. And it's been candidly on that point, it's been Zendesk is in there, our folks are in there, and that relationship has been fantastic. So
And that's something that, 20 years ago or 10 years ago, we never had that opportunity to interact so closely with our partners. So I think that's one thing that tools have really helped all support centers do, is actually continue to have that open dialogue with their partners, so that you're not sending an email off to some company that hosts your support software, and then you have to wait 3 weeks until you get a ticket response back.
I agree. And I think the part of sitting alongside of a company or alongside of us and helping us and knowing what our real issues are versus a very kind of generic approach has been really great.
So I know you can't give financial advice, but is there any advice that you give just on how people can better educate themselves, how they can get the information that they need to better find out what is going on in student loans, what is happening with with the tax changes? What advice do you give along those avenues?
I mean, getting that information, candidly, SoFi has a newsletter that they send out that's very up to date and addresses a lot of that in real time. So, shamelessly, I would go sign up, become a member of SoFi, at least join. Other than that, it's very similar to anybody else. This stuff is changing really fast. And so without that, I mean, you would be going to multiple sites trying to figure out what's going on and how does it relate to you. The interesting thing is, and I think is, it's not a one size fits all. Not everybody has a student loan. Not everybody has a personal loan. Not everybody has a job that may need that advice, And so having relevant information to you in your situation is going to be, is something that SoFi is trying to do. So I mean, it's a very broad question with very specific answers, but I would say that SoFi does actually have a really good daily email that addresses a lot of that, specific to financial advice, and in our app as well, a news feed that's very helpful.
I think that's such a great point to bring up, is being that much more proactive resource for your members than waiting for them to come to you with and responding in a reactive manner. Cole, who is listening, said, "I can confirm the SoFi newsletter is my favorite financial news source." And that's something that we're hearing from a lot of our customers, is that they are looking for those mechanisms to reach out to customers and get them as much information as they can. And one of our listeners, Kate, has asked, how did SoFi help your customer service team pivot from being reactive to more proactive with handling this heightened anxiety that many of us are under?
So ask it again, Sarah. I'm sorry. How did SoFi help the?
Yeah, how are you helping your support organization transition from being less reactive, I'm just answering questions, to more proactive, I'm helping with that coaching, or I'm helping with that increased anxiety?
Yeah, so we have, look, very targeted approaches for folks that we know have student loans. We're reaching out proactively. Hey, here's how it could affect you. Here's how you can respond to it. Here's advice on that. Markets, same thing. The newsletter, very targeted approaches to our customers to get ahead of it. It's not just about driving call volume down. I want to be pretty candid. It's actually about making sure our members are informed, because we actually legitimately care. So, yeah.
Which goes back to your value system. And, and again, I think you were very well prepared in a lot of ways for COVID-19. But I like to ask people to pull out their crystal ball on this program. And, what do you think the future of personal finance and customer experience Is it going to change after we all in 6 months?
Yes, it's going to change. No question about it changing or not. It's a difficult question. I mean, I think if I had a crystal ball, we wouldn't be asking it in light of COVID or whatever else is going on right now. We could have avoided that entirely. But since I don't have a crystal ball, I think what's going to happen is you're going to see a lot of adoption sped up that would have taken a long time. Contactless payments is a big one. P2P volume is through the roof right now. So how are people moving money in a highly digital manner? I think another big thing that I'm fairly passionate about is I think it's shed a little light on the disparities in banking and the inclusion. And when you have a significant number of people that can't get this PPP payment because they don't have access to a bank, what does that look like a year, 2 years from now? You know, as we get ahead of it. I don't know what it looks like. All I can say is I hope that through all this and the digitization of it, that we actually don't lose the humanity of it. You know what I mean? And that SoFi, their effort to keep members first is keep people first, to keep humans first, you know? And I hope that at least from what SoFi is doing today, it does have a big enough impact that the fintechs that come after us are working on a completely different set of assumptions as it relates to what's possible in people getting their money right.
Well, I think that is a beautiful place for us to end, in that, you know, banking will continue to evolve. We're going to keep the humanity around it, and the customer experience and the member will and should always come first. With that, Kirk, I want to thank you so much for sharing your experience with us. And thanks to everyone for taking a moment of your day and spending it here. Please stay connected, and please join us next week for a special CX moment where we talk about how companies are addressing racial inequality and educating on the importance of allyship. So be safe, be helpful, and we will chat again soon. Thank you all very much.